You are listening to the Hustle the Day podcast with Trent Bray from Hustle Energy. Today's guest is Marcus Wing, a self-proclaimed hustler who runs 4FX Productions in Highland, Utah. What's up, everybody? My name is Trent. Welcome to the Hustle the Day podcast, where I interview entrepreneurs and those who get out there and hustle. Today, I am very fortunate to have Marcus Wing here with me. And Marcus is somebody that I met through the Heavy Academy earlier this year, and followed his journey on social media. And I have been very impressed and knew I had to get him here on the show. So welcome, Marcus.
Thanks for having me, man.
No problem. Like I said, the honor's here, but I want the audience to who doesn't follow you on social media to understand who Marcus is a little bit better and kind of give us a little bit of your background.
Okay. So you can follow my social media if you want to. I think I'm most active on Instagram. It's at Big Marcus Wing. It's MarcusWing, like a chicken wing. I don't know. Frankly, I own my own business. It's morphed over the years. Right now I do audiovisual. I set up stage, sound, lighting for events, which is a lot of different events. It's been, corporate events to parties to concerts. We've done Macklemore. We've done bands like Kid Ink, and then we've done some pretty boring things that have paid the bills, but still require AV.
Yeah.
I started out as a promoter a long time ago. I've had a few other companies that kind of got me into promoting. I've put on events here in Utah, surrounding states. I DJ, and I started DJing because I saw a lack of entertainment. And when I was hiring people, I didn't think they were doing a good enough job. So I decided to do it myself. Some people thought some people thought that I was good because they still hire me to do their events now. I traveled all over the country, pretty much to every state, DJing for different events and different companies. And so between all of that, I make a living and support my hobbies and all my kids' hobbies.
Very cool.
Which is vast.
Yeah.
And most important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I understand the family aspect, being having 3 kids myself, but
yeah.
Can you take us back a little bit about what you mentioned? There were some companies that got you into promoting.
I don't want to get too deep in that one.
Okay.
But I can tell you this, that even as a kid, I grew up in Southern California. Mm-hmm. Family didn't have a lot of money. So from a very young age, I figured out that if I wanted something, I had to figure out how to get it.
Yeah.
And so I don't like to call myself an entrepreneur. I don't like the term. I feel like I'm too gangster for that.
Okay.
When you picture an entrepreneur, you picture a tie, a suit, nice shoes. And I'm the guy wearing beat up jeans and either a flannel, white t-shirt, backwards hat, and usually some scuffed up Vans. You know what I mean?
Go.
But I don't know that I like the term entrepreneurship for myself. I'm just kind of like a hustler. You know what I mean? If I'm hungry, and I don't mean just like food hungry, but if there's something I want, I've got a pretty good knack for figuring out how to get it. You know what I mean?
There you go.
So yeah,
you've got a garage full of pit bikes that fall along with that ethos.
Good times.
Yeah. Very cool. So as you were getting to where you are today, who do you think was most influential in that? And that doesn't have to be necessarily business, but...
Yeah, I don't know. From a young, I guess there's 2 different figures that I've kind of had. One was my dad. Mm-hmm. And growing up, my dad was the type of guy who worked construction, put in 80 hours a week, would come home after his 80 hours, would find side jobs, hustle side jobs. And then because we didn't live in the nicest area and our house wasn't the greatest, and he had any time after that, it was working on our house to make sure that we lived in a nice place. And so for my dad, I got that work ethic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I will outwork anybody. And, with my company, you can ask all my guys, I'll be the first one to lift something that's heavy. I'll be the first one to push a box. I'll be the first one to clean up if it needs. And I think I got that aspect from my dad, and I will always, appreciate that and kind of, that's always going to be in me. I'm always going to have that mindset of being blue collar and, I will try to outwork everybody, right?
There you go.
Then on the second hand, we moved from Southern California to Utah when I was 18. I worked in a motorcycle shop, worked with a guy named Rich Agate, and I saw a different aspect where Rich, he worked hard, right? Mm-hmm. He made a good living. He was always riding motorcycles. He was always saying, hey guys, I'll see you in about an hour. I'm going to my kid's soccer game. So I realized at that point, it's like, okay, my dad, he worked hard, but we hardly ever saw him.
Right.
He put in the hours, he provided, he was a great provider, but, the lifestyle aspect, that wasn't something that I wanted, And then I saw Rich over here and I'm like, dude works hard, works, but also is enjoying the heck out of his life. You know what I mean?
Right.
He was constantly on trips with his family and going to Disneyland and, skipping out to go to field trips. And so I've always kind of taken those two aspects, like the hard work and then the working smarter, and have kind of combined them to kind of come up with my own deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, I think those have probably been the two most influential dudes. Both super important. I don't think one's better than the other, but I've taken a bit of both and kind of come up with my own special sauce,
There you go. Yeah. The Marcus Wing brand, which I can relate to that. A lot of that. My mom was, very business oriented, worked really, really hard, but we rarely saw her. And that's something that, same thing. It's like, I want to be around my kids. I want to be there to take them to school and things like that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I am probably different than most people in the fact that I really don't care about money. Money there's no figure that I've put into my vision board.
Right.
There's no end goal of how much money I want to make. It's all lifestyle oriented. I want to live good. I want to be at all my kids' stuff.
There you go.
I want to, go dirt biking when I want to go dirt biking. I don't want to have to ask anybody. I think that to me is success rather than having a bunch of money, but having no time. For me, it's I'd rather make less money and enjoy the heck out of everything. Cause I think frankly, people have it freaking backwards. Okay. Why do you work your whole life till you're 65 so you can retire and you have a ton of money? Then maybe your body's worn out. You're getting older. You can't enjoy things. You can't go as hard on a dirt bike. You can't go surfing and all. It's why don't you enjoy that now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Instead of putting it all off and just focusing strictly on making money. Does that make any sense?
That makes
I hope I'm
sense.
not throwing off your podcast here and telling you the wrong thing.
No.
That's how I look at life.
Absolutely. It's about you. So that's your version of events is what I want to hear. So
yeah, I think success is going to be looking back and, I'm 65 with a worn out, broken body, looking back and just being an absolute storyteller and sitting back and being like, hey, remember that time we almost got ate by a shark in Santa Cruz while surfing and we had no business being there, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which is one thing you've taken up recently is the surfing, which is pretty cool. Like you said, you're living your life and trying to enjoy it now.
Well, you look at motorcycles and I see a lot of the older guys riding motorcycles, which is obviously a passion of mine. Mm-hmm. But a lot of those guys are hobbling and not moving around real good when they're older. But every time I go to the beach, look out on the water, you always see these shredded 70-year-old dudes who are still surfing. And I'm like, maybe that's something I can do when I get old,
Yeah.
And even, getting to the point where I'm getting old, but it's easier on the body. Highly, it keeps you in shape. It's low impact, that sort of thing. So surfing has become a new hobby.
Very cool. So we talked a little bit about how you kind of fell into becoming, as you termed it, a hustler, which I appreciate that you have your own take on that. You don't necessarily resonate with the word entrepreneur. Which
it's not me.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. Everybody, I like your version of that. But
yeah,
so you did the party promoting, and that kind of morphed into more of the setting up events. Was that a natural progression then?
Yeah. So when me and my wife got married, I had a business, and I was planning on that being the thing. And then 6 weeks before we got married, it turned upside down. I realized that wasn't going to be the thing. I had no backup plan. I had no education. Really, I had no money. I was in a lot of debt from other bad decisions. And so I was loading glass for my dad's construction company for like $15 an hour. I was working security at a nightclub. I had no direction, nothing. So, I figured, man, I got to figure something out,
Right.
And that's the one thing I said, like, I'm good at is if I am hungry, I'll figure out how to eat, So
Right.
the club owner that I worked at, I was doing security. Dude was like killing it on Thursday nights. 2,000-3,000 people. It was a country night and a hip hop on the other side. Massive turnout. Saturday nights was a Latin night. 3,000 people, completely sold out. Friday nights, 50 people. You know what I mean? Nobody. And I was working security. He was barely able to pay me,
Yeah.
So I just went to him. I'm like, yo, dude, if I could get people here, how much would it be worth to you? And he was like, I'll pay you half of whatever you can get here. So at the time, I was like, well, let me throw a party once a month. So I did. And I think the first time I threw a party, and I hate throwing out numbers because I don't want to sound like a pompous, dude. But I mean, the first time I threw a party, I made like 15 grand.
Wow.
And for me at that time, 23, I mean, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it went from that. And then I said, well, dude, this works. So I started doing it once a month. And then I'm like, well, if I could do colleges once a month and I'm making good money, why don't we do a high school party once a month and make money? So I was doing 2 parties a month and making pretty good money. Well, then what happened is everybody saw what I was doing. You know what I mean? Everybody's like, oh, dude, it must be easy. Great, throw up a couple speakers and get some blinky lights and, put on a freaking iTunes playlist and
there you go.
Charge people at the door. And what they're doing is they're copying everything that I was doing. Word for word, flyers would look the same. And so people would go thinking that it was something like I was doing.
Right.
And then they were like, well, this isn't the same. I'm never going to go to any of these again, which my numbers started going down because it became oversaturated. So I'm looking in the distance and I'm like, okay, I'm throwing parties. This is good. But they're starting to go down, not making as much money. What could I do? Well, then I started people having call me saying, hey, you're a DJ. You're a really good DJ. I've been to your parties. Do you want to come DJ at this school, this college? I think the first one that called was Utah State, I'm like, yeah, sure. And they're like, oh, do you have your own equipment? And I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah, I got that. So at first I started renting equipment and I'm like, all right, cool. Go do a gig at Utah State. And then I realized I'm like, well, if I had my own equipment, I'd make more money, Right. And, you could count on these colleges doing events 2 to 3 times a year, big events, and they'd pay it. So it was kind of like good money, It was like, you knew what was coming. You knew how much you were going to make. You knew how much, your expenses were going to be. So I could tell you at the end of the day, how much money I was going to have, at the end of the month, where with a party, it's like if I was throwing one party in the month and it didn't make money, I was screwed,
Right.
So I was still throwing parties, but I started taking all the money that I was making and buying gear. And then I approached it differently and said, okay, cool. I'm going to start doing these colleges, right? I started doing the colleges. Eventually I said, okay, I'm tired of throwing parties. I really don't like being around all the people, which is weird. People think that I'm like, love being in crowds, being around a ton of people. I don't, I don't. Usually I'm behind a barricade. Right. On a stage by myself, and I don't have to be around anybody. So I was like, all right, 2 years I want to be at parties, at least throwing my own parties. I didn't want to have to be a promoter. I didn't want to have to be passing out flyers and constantly trying to connect with people. So within 2 years, I morphed over into basically all college and all high school events, From there, sorry, I talk a lot too. You didn't know you were getting into.
That's great.
From there, I was like, okay, cool. Well, these college events are cool, great, but they're consistent, but they don't pay a lot of money. It's like I'm bringing a stage, sound, lighting, audio technicians, lighting technicians, video wall. I'm the entertainment myself, the DJ, and I'm getting paid, $3,000, $3,500. I'm like, this isn't making much sense, if I'm doing all the work. So then I was like, well, shoot. These corporate events, man, they pay good money.
Right.
I can make really good money. And generally, it's a lot easier work. And I don't have to take as much gear. And they usually feed you. I mean, it's a pretty good deal. You know what I mean? So we moved into corporate events. And naturally started doing more of those and started getting into other rentals. And that's kind of where we're at now, is we're just progressing as I get, I guess, a little bit smarter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And as my interest level change, you know, I used to love being a DJ and doing these big parties, and I still do. Don't get me wrong, you know, but I just found that there's other ways that are easier to make better money, less time at events, and allows me to be home more, you know?
No, I understand. I relate a lot to that in that I'd rather be up on a stage talking or, you know, whatnot, than be down in mingling with people. And so I totally understand where you're coming from on that. It's that separation is key for me. I'm very introverted. So,
Right.
So one thing that I think would be really interesting in your line of work, one of my favorite things to do is people watch. You get a lot of people watching going on.
For sure.
From your vantage point. What's been some of the craziest things you've seen that you can talk about at least?
Oh, I don't know. My wife used to work all of our events.
Yeah.
You know, when I first started my events, I was hiring people to take money at these events, and they weren't people I knew or trusted. And I was coming up short on money every time, from the ticket count to the cash count.
Yeah.
And it happened 3 times in a row. And I said, screw this. I said, I'm not going to have anyone take money that I don't trust. So my wife came in with our 6-month-old baby in a car seat hanging out behind her at a party. My mom would come in, my sister would come in. And from then on, you know, money would, you know, always be on, you know what I mean? But my wife would be up there and, you know, granted, I'm in this environment where it's young party kids, but I don't talk to anybody. I talk to my guys at work. I'll shake people's hands, and that's about it. And not because I'm disrespectful. A lot of people probably think I'm mean or rude, but it's just more out of respect for my wife.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be that guy, you know. Right. But she would be up front, and people would make stuff up all the time. Girls would come up and they'd be like, hey, I get in for free. And she's like, well, why do you get in for free? She's like, oh, well, I'm Marcus Wing's girlfriend. And she's like, oh, it's nice to meet you. I'm Marcus Wing's wife. You know what I mean? So that, and then one time, you know, everybody would always try to haggle on price. It's $10. You know what I mean? Kids would come in, they'd be like, oh, hey, I've only got $8. And she'd be like, all right, cool. Come see me when you got $10.
Yeah.
And one kid called her a bitch.
Oh.
And so she stopped. She let other people take money, and she came and got me. Eventually the kid came in, and she told me, I said, okay, show me who he is. So I walked up to him. I said, hey, I said, you call my wife a bitch? He's like, I'm like, did you call her a bitch? He's like, no. I'm like, okay, well, she said you call her a bitch. Did you call her a bitch or did you call her a liar? Which one? You know? And he's, and I just grabbed him by his collar, dragged him to the door, and told him to never come back.
There you go. That's
yeah,
awesome.
As far as people watching, honestly, when I'm DJing, I don't pay much attention to what's happening besides specifics. Hey, right. am I getting them to move? Are they responding? If they're not responding, I'm in and out of songs within seconds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But those are some of the things that kind of stand out, you know?
Yeah.
It's interesting, you know, I'm LDS and I go to church and they'd be like, so Brother Wing, what do you do for work? And I'm like, oh, I throw parties for a living. They're like, okay, well, how do you support your family, Brother Wing? I'm like, I throw parties for work. And they're like, well, is that all you do? And then I would, go even further back. No, I sell weed. You need any? And they just, a little taken back, but
yeah,
it's not the most common thing to do for a living here in Utah,
No, it's not, but you're proof that it can support the family and it can still be fun too. So you've kind of done this a little bit, but one question I wanted to ask you is, how would you define hustle?
Just that is, hey, for me, I've never had a safety net. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? My parents aren't in a position to help. My wife's parents aren't in a position to help. If I don't have enough money at the end of the day, bills don't get paid. It's not like I can be like, oh, it's cool, I'll just call this person and borrow some money. I don't have that option and never have, And so for me, it's just figuring out how to make it work, I could be the stupidest person, and some people are probably going to listen to this and be like, this guy is an idiot. Well, frankly, I am, but I'm smart in some ways where it's You know, when I think about hustling, it's like, okay, cool. Back in the day, my parents would buy me Payless shoes. I'd get made fun of at school, and I'd be like, I don't want to wear Payless shoes anymore. So I had a guy in my ward who cut down trees after school. He was a teacher, and then cut down trees. So at 10 years old, I'm out, you know, dragging trees over to a chipper after school so I could afford to buy shoes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it doesn't seem important now, but then it was super important to me, you know?
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, cool. You know, I've got to pay for this. I got to pay for that. These bills are coming up. If I don't have the money, then I just figure out how to do it. And that sounds maybe overly simplified, but I mean, it's not, you know, it's just figuring out how to do it. There's no safety net. You know, if you don't pay for it, it's not going to get met. You got to get it done. You know what I mean? So for me, that's it. It's, if you're hungry, figure out how to eat.
There you
go. Know, there's a lot of people that don't have that, and I don't know if you can develop it or not, but it's an instinct that, you know, not only just eat for yourself, but provide.
Right.
You know, I've got 5 people living in this house besides myself that also need for me to feed. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah.
And one thing that I really like that you're at least trying to instill is the work ethic in your children. You bring them to events sometimes to help out, but then it's not just that. You know, if they're fortunate enough to have a pit bike track in their backyard, they go out ride, you make sure they wash them down and things like that. I mean, that's
the
pretty
one
cool
thing
to instill that.
I would never want to do is rob my kids of the hustle. You know what I mean? Just because I'm doing better, they have nice things. You know what I mean? Like, we race dirt bikes. They all have brand new dirt bikes. I've done that. But at the same time, like, I don't want to rob them of what I learned as a kid. Hey, if you want something, you got to get it. So my kids, anytime they want something, they have to earn it. You know what I mean? I've taken Jax, came and helped me set up a stage last week. London will work in the shop. Even my littlest kids, when they want, hey, Dad, my youngest Kinley wanted a crybaby doll. She saw on the TV. And so she went out and picked up trash in my shop for a couple hours, you know, over a couple days. So for me, it's important to, you know, even though we have the means and we're doing better than, you know, I did when I was growing up, I never want to rob them of like that. My dad's side of learning was like, hey, you have to work. You have to outwork everybody. If you want something, you got to figure out how to get it. And I don't want to like take that away from them because we're doing better, you know?
Yeah. Going back a little bit to what you said, you know, some people might think you're an idiot. I personally do not.
Well,
However,
appreciate that, man.
However, it's a common phrase though, is to be the dumbest person in the room, because you want to be able to soak up knowledge of the people that are around you and be able to learn from them. But also, I think having that attitude is what allows you to really go out there and hustle. Because if you think that you're too smart to do something like picking up trash or, you know, whatever it is, like you said, when you're hungry, you go out, do whatever it takes. If you feel like you're too smart for that, then you may just let that opportunity pass you by.
Did you listen to that episode we did on the heavy checklist with Rich?
Yes.
Rich is kind of that guy I was talking about. I mean, he brought up like the point that just really, I think, takes it home is that, and that's being dumb enough to do something.
Right.
You know, where some people, I have guys that have worked for me in the past that were way too smart for their own good. They were just analyzed and overanalyzed. Be like, well, we shouldn't do that because of this and this and this. Sometimes you just got to be dumb enough to believe that you can actually do it and make it happen, you know, instead of like overanalyzing and thinking, well, it just can't be done because this, we don't have enough time. We don't have this. I'm dumb enough to say, hey, you know, if I want a new Harley, cool. Give me a couple of weeks. I'll figure out how to get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, man, it's not easy. I mean, like when me and Heidi were first getting married, like I wanted to be out of debt in a year. I ran firework tents and they were like, hey, you can make really good money running one firework tent. I'm like, cool. One firework tent. Well, how many you got available? They're like, well, we've got 4. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll do all 4. Wow. And I ran 4 and I was working night security and I was like, you know, selling pretty much everything I owned and working side jobs and anything I could do. And so it's not like it comes easy, but you just get that mentality, like no safety net. If you want something, you're the only one that can make it happen. I think there's a lot of power in being dumb enough to believe that you can do it, you know?
And that, like you mentioned, the Heavy Checklist podcast that you kind of organize and do all the audio work for, and also a guest host, or I guess a regular host, I should say.
Yeah.
That's been a new experience for you, hasn't it? And kind of helping build and establish your business.
Well, that and just, I never really believed in personal development. Mm-hmm. I'd be the first guy to make fun of you for it, and I just thought everything was cool. I mean, I was doing fine, but then we started the podcast, and for me, I wanted to jump right in and made a lot of good progression from personal development. Now I'm a big believer. And I mean, before here, I went to the gym, which I've just started, a few months ago, and I made some goals and doing some different things that I really feel like have helped me out a ton,
I think building your own business starts with yourself. And so I think once you fine-tune yourself, then you can fine-tune your business as well. So well,
that, and you realize that there's no peak or plateau that you get to, it's not like you get up there and be like, I made it, what up, nothing left, I'm good. And I kind of felt like I was sitting on a plateau, or a small plateau, thinking, I'm good, everything's good, man, my family's great, we have some nice things, yada yada yada. I gotten super comfortable. And I realized that there's a whole other side of the mountain to climb. And with that, there's a lot of gratification, what I mean? And satisfaction that comes along with continuing to climb,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's one thing that somebody starting a business today that you would tell them to do every single day?
Well, and this is another thing we talk about on the checklist. Make sure owning a business is what you want to do. Because, there is some real benefits to working for someone. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, being able to take your boots off, meaning you get home at 5:00 and you have no worries. Right. You don't got to worry about paying payroll. You don't got to worry about how you're going to feed your family. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry about, a vehicle breaking down and it costing $5,000 that you don't have, Right. You don't have to worry about, work not being in the pipeline and how you're going to pay for your family and support everybody who work for your family. You know what I mean? So my biggest tip is make sure that's what you want to do. Cause it's really a very popular thing right now to be an entrepreneur, and you got guys yelling and screaming at you. Oh, if you're not an entrepreneur, if you don't own your own business, you're a failure, which I think is complete crap. Yeah. You know what I mean? You can live a great lifestyle. And for me, like I said, having weekends off, I haven't had a weekend off in probably 12 years. Yeah. Very little, maybe a few. You know what I mean? I work every single weekend. I travel every single weekend, which sometimes would be super cool to be home and go to my kid's soccer game. But for me, it's okay, well, I got Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday to be at home. So, my biggest thing is make sure that's what you want to do. You know what I mean? And then the second thing I would say is, either jump all the way in if you're in a position to do that, burn the ship. I mean, leave no safety net so that you have no option to fail. You know what I mean? Or do it smart and do it over time and don't quit your day job and build it up as you go. So I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but two things. It's you may be young and you may have a wife and that's it with no real responsibilities. Great time to start a business. Yeah. If you got 4 kids at home and, they're counting on you to provide, maybe take it a little bit slower and play a little bit more safe. And number 3, being a CEO and an intrapreneur of somebody else's company, there's a lot of good in that too. Absolutely. And you can grow your business inside someone else's business. That's kind of my thoughts with the whole thing. Yeah. So like you mentioned, starting a business isn't necessarily for everyone, but it is, so far, one of the interviews that I have recorded was somebody who was an entrepreneur. And so there is definitely the right personality for that versus starting your own business. So I appreciate that thought. So if you were to look in the dictionary at Marcus Wing, what would it say? Hopefully not asshole. I don't know, man. I don't really like to toot my own horn, but I would imagine, maybe not in the dictionary, but maybe on my headstone, maybe when I'm gone and dead, whether that be like 2 years from now, which with all my motorcycle wrecks could be very possible, or whether it be when I'm 90 years old and crippled and deaf from too many events and, too many motorcycle wrecks. I just hope that at the end that it's, I've taken full advantage of my life. You look at the span of a lifetime, 80, 90 years, that's all you get, And the idea of like working my whole life sounds daunting.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not the right entrepreneurial thing to say, but for me, like, I just hope that I take advantage of everything, every second, every day. Everything's an adventure. The reason why I started surfing is because I went to California on gigs like 15 times this summer, Well, if I'm in California, am I just going to sit in my hotel room and wait for the event to happen? Or do I buy a surfboard and then go a day early and surf all day and surf the morning before the event and then do the event and then hurry and get a surf, session in and then go home? You know what I mean? So that for me, at the end of the day, I just hope that I take advantage of life and enjoy the heck out of it. People need to realize, man, like, life isn't, this dark thing that we just endure, but it's meant to be enjoyed, And so that's kind of my whole theory on things is work hard, but enjoy the heck out of it,
Absolutely. I love that. So I'm not looking for any specific answer. I really want to know who is Marcus Wing and, what the things you value. And so I appreciate that. So I want to do some rapid fire kind of off the wall questions.
Shoot.
To find out a little bit more about you. Now, something that I know you probably already have an answer to because you have done some fighting, but you're about to fight someone. What song comes on as your soundtrack?
Bro Him, Pennywise.
There you go.
That's it. That was my fight. So the one fight I did have, I walked out to Bro Him, Pennywise. Yeah.
There you go. So let's say that you've been given an elephant. You can't give it away. You can't sell it. What do you do with that elephant?
I don't know. They take really big craps. I wouldn't want them in the backyard. I don't know, man. This is going to sound bad too, but maybe I would, does elephant taste good? I mean, maybe fill the freezer.
I do not know.
Fill a few freezers.
Okay. If you could make a rule that everybody in the world had to follow for one day, what would it be?
Be nice to people.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Far too many people are not nice to each other. I appreciate that. Who would win in a fight, Spider-Man or Batman, and why?
I'd say Spider-Man because he's got actual powers and not just like gizmos,
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. And then finally, does pineapple belong on a pizza?
No, absolutely not. And in my opinion, nothing belongs on a pizza besides cheese. And extra cheese and more cheese.
Okay.
That's it, yeah.
See, I'm the type that I like meat on the cheese, meat on the pizza, but that's about it. And
extra cheese and cheese on top of cheese. That's it for me.
You'd get along with my 7-year-old really well. So, any shout outs that you'd like to shout out here on?
My wife for being awesome, and what I do. It's really hard, and a lot of women could not support what I do. You know what I mean? Especially over the years and all the events I've done and the places I've had to DJ. She's a freaking rock in our relationship. Super, super supportive. And she's allowed me to be successful and not having to worry about her being upset with me for, places I've had to be. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That, and I want to give a shout out to all my guys that work hard. You know what I mean? Because like I said, my business wouldn't run without good people that work for me. So shout out to Tyler, shout out to Joey, shout out to Taylor, and everybody else that I'm forgetting, LA. And yeah, everybody over the years too. I've had, 100 people who've come and gone, and I appreciate all those guys.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, you definitely lead by example. I was fortunate enough to help you tear down at the Second Heavy Academy, and you
appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. You were working hard, and I think everybody elevated themselves to match your level. So I appreciate the example you do, the example you give, and for your definition of hustle. I really resonated with that. You mentioned it on Instagram one time. If you're hungry, you're going to find a way to eat. And so I appreciate
and
that.
I'm hungry. I'm always hungry.
Yeah, always something you got to work for and provide for that family. So
cool, man.
Well, I appreciate your time, and
shout out to you for coming to my house too.
Yeah, no
driving
worries.
Down.
Yeah,
no
worries. I appreciate your time. So, and time is the one thing you can't get back. So I appreciate it.
You bet.
And for all those listening, make sure to follow Marcus at Big Marcus Wing on Instagram. And for all those who were inspired by this, go out there and hustle the day. Hey, thanks for listening to the Hustle the Day podcast all the way through. I really appreciate it. Just want to let you know that I help small businesses. So if you need help with your online strategy for your small business, go ahead and hit me up, Trent V Bray on Instagram or TrentVBray.com.